All right, metal fans, stay tuned for my top 10 favorite metal albums of 2024. But I'll toss in some honorable mentions as well as albums others are talking about, but just didn't make it to my own list. So yes, all of that coming up. So as I do every year, I totaled up all of the vinyl I bought in 2024, and this time that number is 155 albums, which is about 33 more records than I bought last year. Anyways, out of all of those records, we're going to talk about at least 10 of them, if not a few more outside of my top 10. And this definitely means that if I didn't buy the album on the vinyl format, then it's not in my top 10. So when you hit the comments section, definitely keep that in mind. Anyways, I do have a few rules to this top 10 albums thing that I'd like to state right up front. So let's get to that. First off, no EPs, no compilations, no reissues, and no live albums. My list will be for new studio full-length albums only. Also, and I do stress this every year, I want to state the utter and total subjectivity of my list. It is my list and not necessarily yours. Hopefully everyone knows the difference. And as always, I hold back from watching any other top 10 metal album videos here on YouTube before shooting this, purely to avoid any assumption of outside influence here. Or at least I try. Getting that out of the way, I do want to briefly run through my honorable mentions first. Basically albums that just barely fell off the main list, but are still very much worth checking out. So let's do that. Starting off with Spectral Voices is their second studio album entitled Sparagmos. They are American death doom. Of the 4 available tracks, my favorite is Sinew Sensor. Of course, I also have to mention Attic and their third studio album, Return of the Witchfinder. They are German heavy metal with an occult bent. Favorites are Darkest Rites, The Thief's Candle, and The Baleful Baron. Also in 2024, we got the debut studio album from Kerry King. This is From Hell I Rise. They are American thrash metal, predictably similar to King's mainstay band Slayer. Favorites are Diablo, Idle Hands, and Rage. Next is Nasty Savage with their 5th studio album, Jeopardy Broom. They are American power thrash with some prog leanings. Favorites are Southern Fried Homicide, Witches Sabbath, and Aztec Elegance. Also, you should check out the 2nd studio album from the Troops of Doom entitled A Mass to the Grotesque. They are Brazilian death thrash featuring an early member of Sepultura. Favorites are Chapels of the Unholy, The Imposter King, and The Grotesque. Of course, you should check out the 24th studio album from Saxon entitled Hell, Fire, and Damnation. They are British heavy metal and a key band in the new wave of British heavy metal scene of the late 1970s and early 1980s. Favorites are Hellfire and Damnation, Fire and Steel, and above all, Supercharger. And let's not forget the 10th studio album from Nile called The Underworld Awaits Us All. They are American tech death. Favorites are Chapter for Not Being Hung Upside Down on the Stake in the Underworld and Made to Eat Feces by the 4 Apes, Nakata 2, Enter the Golden Age, and True Gods of the Desert. So with that, let's get to my top 10 metal albums of 2024. My number 10 choice is from a Swedish heavy doom metal band who came back with a killer 10th studio album that serves as a soundtrack to a total Viking invasion. Of course, this is Grand Magus, and the album is Sunraven. So this is a concept album based on the story of Beowulf, so in other words, material ripe for this band's picking, if you're already keen on their usual lyrical content. Music has this whole bluesy Sabbath meets Judas Priest riff style thing, but also keeps an epic feel to the largely heavy doom proceedings. Vocals are soaring and soulful and are the perfect call to arms for whatever conquering and conquest you have in mind. And the solos are definitely heavy and ponderous, but also sweeping, crunchy, and epic. Favorites here are The Wheel of Pain, Sunraven, and Hour of the Wolf. So a fantastic return from a 5-year recording gap, with material having a strong connection to earlier efforts going back to 2012's The Hunt. Anyways, at number 10 is Sunraven by Grand Magus. At number 9 is an album from an American blackened speed metal band from Portland, Oregon that blends black and speed with some trad metal and even the occasional hard rock vibe, along with some seriously occult lyrics. So let's talk about the 4th studio album from Bewitcher. This is Spell Shock. So the balance between blackened and thrashy is certainly favoring the latter this time, with only the raspy vocals and the devilish lyrics qualifying as the former, but it also doubles down on speed and trad metal, with some slight moments of new wave or British heavy metal as well. Also, a step up in terms of production and variety in songwriting from the last record. Fans of bands like Midnight and Hellripper would likely dig this band and this album. Favorites include Starfire Maelstrom, Out Against the Law, and We Die in Dust. So Bewitcher brings in a more rock-oriented and overall more diverse approach on this record when compared to many of the blackened speed or blackened thrash metal bands out there. Granted, this album is still full throttle and relentless, so don't expect it to be pretty or experimental, but do expect it to be a whole lot of fun. Anyways, at number 9 is Spellshock by Bewitcher. My number 8 choice is from a Norwegian death metal band formed in the late 1990s by former members of Emperor and Satyricon. Over 25 years later and a number of lineup changes, the band still knows how to deliver an engaging and dynamic record, such as their 11th studio album entitled Nonagon, and that band is Blood Red Throne. So a largely mid-paced effort, but with some moments of alternating blast and melody. Really dig the raspy scream and growl combo, notably in some of the choruses. Also, moments of melodic guitar work, occasionally dipping into the harmonic, but also never overstaying its welcome, as the shift to brutal death metal is consistently quick. Some of the riffing occasionally skitters into rapid thrash, which adds a bit more flavor to this record. Favorites are definitely Ode to the Obscene, Tempest Sculptor, and Blade Eulogy. So plenty of engaging riffs and definitely enough variety to keep it interesting, but also cohesive. I do catch some scant moments of Cannibal Corpse, but perhaps by way of Bloodbath. Overall, a solid death metal record that totally earns its place on this list. Anyways, at number 8 is Nonagon by Blood Red Throne. At number 7 is an album from a British heavy metal band that has over 50 years and 50 million album sales under their studded leather belts. And while many bands of their age had long ago called it a day, they still crush it. Proof of which on their 19th studio album. Yes, we are definitely talking about the mighty Judas Priest and their latest record, Invincible Shield. So a turbo-esque synth and guitar passage leads straight into Halford's signature power wails and gritty high-pitched screams, along with a killer combo of Faulkner and Tipton, trading leads at a furious rate. Also hearing quite a bit of groove as well, with some faint and not so faint reaching back of sorts to the band's past. Not just a Painkiller and Turbo, but even Stained Class, Sin After Sin, and British Steel, but without being ham-handed or overdone. Nice peaks and valleys throughout, which never allow this record to fall into stagnancy. Favorites include Panic Attack, As God Is My Witness, and Invincible Shield. So a solid Priest record full of cool melodies, lots of shred, anthems galore, and I even love the cover art. So at number 7 is Invincible Shield by Judas Priest. My number 6 choice is from an American death metal band from Cleveland, Ohio that delivers the old school brutality along with some modern groove and a little hardcore flavor as well. And nowhere is that more evident than on their second studio album, Manual Manic Procedures. Yes, this is 200 Stab Wounds. So, tons of headbanging chug with some hardcore influence throughout, but largely filthy death metal with the speed, groove, and thrashiness dialed up from the last record. Also thick and nasty guitar tone, pummeling bass lines, and a variety of two-step, blast beats, and relentless mid-pace rhythms. Lots of catchy riffs amidst the manic solos, with a few creepy musical interludes adding some color to the mix. A whole lot packed into a nearly 30-minute record. Favorites are Hands of Eternity, Manual Manic Procedures, and Defiled Gestation. So, a solid step up from their already stellar debut album. Still some Cannibal Corpse meets Dying Fetus influence, but also some deviations from that route that more than suggest that they're starting to work out their own identity. Anyways, at number 6 is Manual Manic Procedures by 200 Stab Wounds. At number 5 is an album from an American death thrash band that has a bit of an interest in a certain Japanese monster movie franchise, but they also excel in up-tempo, tight, and bang-worthy tracks, such as those on their third studio album, Guardian of the Universe. Yes, this is Oxygen Destroyer. So from the band that brings us all things Godzilla comes a wealth of speed runs and heavy groove, with vocals jumping back and forth between blackened screeching and deep death growls. Solos are insanely shreddy, occasionally melodic and often brief, also tight and precise. Overall, a very thrashed record in most ways. Favorites here are Guardian of the Universe, The Final Hope, Eradicating the Symbiotic Hive Mind Entity from Beyond the Void, and Nightmarish Visions from the Devil's Envoy. So a sample-heavy album filled with kaiju worship, fast riffing, and insane vocals, but perhaps a bit thrashier than previous efforts. Overall, this is utterly headbangable. So at number 5 is Guardian of the Universe by Oxygen Destroyer. My number 4 choice is from an American power thrash metal band that has truly come back from a questionable mid-career with a run of incredible albums, including their 15th and latest studio record. Of course, I could only be talking about Flotsam and Jetsam, and the album is I Am the Weapon. So slamming drums, relentless riffing, and of course the killer vocals of Eric A.K. take you through a record that balances speed and thrash with a strong trad metal bass, full of heaviness and catchiness throughout. And that catchiness is especially gained in the very strong choruses. Plenty of grit and power to match even this band's classic era offerings, and that's saying quite a bit. Also, guitar work here is top-notch with cool speed runs and classic power metal riffing, as well as melodic accents dropped in when they're needed. Favorites are A New Kind of Hero, I Am the Weapon, and Black Wings. So, we've been fortunate to have this really great run of Flots albums in recent years, notably this one and the 2 or 3 before it. Because of these, it's clear that Flotsam and Jetsam can still go the distance in terms of aggression, songwriting, and overall metal relevance, which is why this album truly deserves to be on this list. Anyways, at number 4 is I Am the Weapon by Flotsam and Jetsam. And number 3 is an album from an American melodic death doom band that somehow managed to surpass an already stellar debut record released back in 2022, but now also on a new label, bringing in a bigger sound, better production, and lots of dark, overwhelming mood. And with that, let's talk about the second studio album from Mother of Graves called The Periapt of Absence. So Mother of Graves are once again fantastic in delivering crushing doom, melodic death, and segments of moody guitars, keys, and/or strings, not too dissimilar from bands such as Catatonia and Paradise Lost. Music and lyrics bring a lot of shifting emotions throughout, anger and grief at the fore, but also melancholy and regret. If you enjoyed their debut record When the Shadows Adorn, you should definitely love this one. Favorites include Shatter the Visage, As the Earth Fell Silent, and Like Darkness to a Dying Flame. So Mother of Graves deftly avoid the sophomore slump by releasing a record that retains the tone and emotion of their first release, but ramps up the production, the mood, and the song quality considerably. Definitely melodic death doom done right. So at number 3 is The Periapt of Absence by Mother of Graves. My number 2 choice is from an American death metal band from California, formed in 2011, but still having a great deal of relevance in 2024. So much so that they're one of my favorite death metal bands of the modern era, and that's why I'm glad that their 5th and latest studio album made it to the number 2 slot. This is Fragments of the Ageless by Skeletal Remains. So, machine gun riffs, groove beats, and menacing bass with chaotic and cascading solos throughout, with the general guitar work bringing us haunting melodic runs, harmonic passages, and tremolo madness. For the most part, the album is a straight death metal record, but with some interesting change-ups and other flourishes here and there to keep it all moving along. Favorites are To Conquer the Devout, Forever in Sufferance, and Verminous Embodiments. So an album that I liked when I first heard it, but really took hold after multiple listens. A very strong death metal offering that is brutal, frantic, and thoroughly worthy of its position on this list. Anyways, at number 2 is Fragments of the Ageless by Skeletal Remains. And my number 1 album of 2024 is from an American melodic death metal band whose future was in question after the unfortunate death of their singer in 2022, but they truly rose from those ashes to deliver an incredibly tight and memorable collection of tracks in the form of their 10th studio album. That album is Servitude by the Black Dahlia Murder. So right away, plenty of blasty drums, off-kilter riffing, and the screamy, growly assault of Brian Eschbach, who jumped from guitar to vocals to replace their late singer Trevor Sturnad. Despite the lineup changes, we still get breakneck speed with the occasional dipping in of unexpected shifts in melody, interspersed with melodic guitar solos and runs. Playing is tight and technical, but unlike the past album, seems like there's a bit more grit to the production sound here. Also, expect the usual Swede death influence, but occasionally some Carcass creeps in from time to time as well. Favorites include Evening Ephemeral, Aftermath, and Mammoth's Hand. So, it's clear that although the loss of their former singer is both senseless and sad, the Black Dahlia murder manages to succeed in his absence. This album is tight, it's packed with memorable tracks, and at almost 33 minutes, it does its job and then exits proudly. So the top metal album of 2024, for me, is Servitude by the Black Dahlia Murder. Of course, these weren't the only albums released in 2024, so just to be fair, let's briefly mention the albums that others might be talking about this year, but simply didn't make my list. First is the 5th studio album from Italian death metal band Fulci. This is Duck Face Killings, and I guess I'm going to be that guy and say that the rap song on the record really put me off, and that ended up pushing this album lower and lower down my buy list. I might still look into it later, but just haven't been motivated to do so, and largely because of one song. Next is the 3rd studio album from American death metal band Blood Incantation. This is Absolute Elsewhere. So, this was more about the vinyl for this title selling out super fast than anything else, though the $70 price tag at Bandcamp right now doesn't help either. Then I simply forgot about it. So, come the new year, I'll get back to it and see if I can finally score a copy and at a reasonable price. Also in 2024, we got the 3rd studio album from American death metal band Undeath. This is More Insane, and I really was initially set to get this one, but it just didn't grab me the way It's Time to Rise from the Grave did, but I'm willing to give it another shot at some point. I should also mention the 3rd studio album from epic doom metal band Crypt Sermon. This is The Stygian Rose. So, I really didn't feel this record measured up to the previous albums, which I have and love. Yet another album that might get revisited, but not right away. Also of relevance in 2024 is the debut studio album from Swedish black and thrash band Hellbutcher. This is Hellbutcher. So, a serviceable album, but in some ways I burned out on a lot of black and thrash and black and speed metal bands, save for a few. And this record simply dropped off during this burnout for me. Still, I'll get around to checking it out, whenever. And of course, some folks will also be talking about the 13th studio album from American death metal band Deicide. This is Banished by Sin. And to be fair, I pretty much checked out on Deicide after the 3rd album. I mean, I love the early stuff, but I just feel they simply retread and regurgitate the same things over and over again, and so I just didn't bother getting it. And speaking of these top 10 choices, what did you think of them? Do you have your own top 10 list? Whether it's in video form or text form, you should definitely let me know about it, as well as anything else that makes sense in the comments below. Love to see your lists. Of course, I had already reviewed my top 10 albums in past episodes of Vinyl Haul, so you can definitely watch those for many more details. I go into much more depth about those albums. I provided links in the description of this video to each and every one of those videos, so definitely check them out when you have the chance. And of course, if you're new to my channel, my name is Matt. This is the Accusation Network, where each and every week I cover the subjects of metal vinyl collecting, but also classic and modern metal in general. If that sounds like something you want to see more of, you should definitely consider subscribing to my channel. Always appreciate that. Also, like this video and maybe even share it with some of your friends on social media. As for my regular viewers, a big thanks to all of you who've taken the time to watch my videos, comment on them, and share them on social media. And especially those who joined up on Patreon and became patrons of my channel. Hugely appreciate all of your support and definitely looking forward to making more videos for all of you in 2025. Until then, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.